Chapter 18. A Branding. Garendo sent out letters to King Rileso, Prince Sirion, Lady Quinia, and the Lady Jarissa, Lady Evadelha, as well as Father Luchon, the closest to the Serode, who had finally come out of hiding, had to a leader, telling them to swear loyalty to him. None of the Serode could read Quinian, though. King Rileso and Prince Sirion agreed, but their letters made it clear that they were only doing it because they did not want their people to be massacred. King Rileso also mentioned that his mother, who had been killed by the Riskins, whose king had been working for Garendo, would want him to keep them safe. Lady Quinia did not actually receive it for some time because of the delay in her return to Old Sillery. Lady Evadelha had, in true Jarissa fashion, responded by suggesting a location for him to go to, and denouncing him and declaring the Jarisse's neutrality ended in a very colorful manner. This was the rest of their correspondence.
Lady Evadelha, I am the rightful ruler of the Jarisse, so I know how to fight you, and may I remind you of the state you were in after the great Jarissa War? I do this for you and for our people. We have been neglected for too long. If the Queen will not help us, then we must do it ourselves. Signed, King Garendo et le Chiron von Jarisse nes Rizière, King of Quinia. Garendo, you are stuck in the 7th century. Things have changed, and every one of us would rather die than bow to you again. We are doing fine, thank you, and we don't need to overthrow the king to solve anything. Signed, Lady Evadelha et le Chiron von Deria, Lady Jarissa. Lady Evadelha, I admire your boldness. It's a trait that we Jarisse take pride in, but be careful. Boldness can easily turn into foolishness. Signed, King Garendo et le Chiron von Jarisse nes Rizière, King of Quinia. Garendo, we will never bow to you. Jarissa will remain free. Signed, Lady Evadelha et le Chiron von Deria, Lady Jarissa. Lady Evadelha, I don't want to fight you, but a divided country is a doomed one, and if you attack me, I will defend myself. Signed, King Garendo et le Chiron von Jarisse nes Rizière, King of Quinia. Garendo, if you loved your people, you would let us remain free. If you loved your people, you would not commit these crimes that drag our reputation through the mud. If you were doing this for us as you claim to be, you would not threaten to kill us. Signed, Lady Evadelha et le Chiron von Deria, Lady Jarissa.
So Lady Evadelha fortified Jarissa, and the Jarisse and the few Silendites who lived there defended it fiercely and were succeeding, at least for now. Alenia joined them as well. The Friolenites created a military branch to help. As for Prince Sirion and King Rileso, they made a blood magic promise that they would not betray Garendo as long as he reigned, or else they would die. The Quinian bishops were given the same ultimatum as their predecessors in the times of Elie and Nice: embrace modalism, or at least stop attacking it, or die. They all chose the latter, and spent the following days preaching against modalism as much as they could. However, even if they had chosen the former, they would have still been killed, as Garendo found their music tastes, especially the archbishop's, so offensive that he thought they should be killed for them. Garendo was a musician first and a singer second. In his mind, the best kind of music was accompanied choral music, followed by instrumental music, and then finally by a cappella music. The last of these three had been gaining popularity in Quinia over the past years, and while enjoying a cappella music did not warrant death on its own, there were a few pieces that Garendo did like. The style that was becoming popular at the time, and which was well liked by the archbishop, was so removed from what it had been in his time that he decided it did warrant his death. Well, that and all the other things he had been doing that no one liked. Archbishop Miradelo was found just having finished the sprinkling rite that opened La Caria. When the assassins came through the door, he smiled and greeted them with "Good morning" in Adelcite. The congregation did not realize anything was wrong until he got shot many more times than was necessary, very soon after he spoke. The choir did not fall. The choir master began to tell the choir that they could do their old-fashioned polyphonic La Caria setting. They had been preparing it for some time, and then realized the archbishop would be coming. But then the spirit of Vitanus, known for playing guitars and singing about building houses, rose from his body and began singing a hymn that sounded like its rhythms had been written by a baby who ate the pen, got the ink all over his hands, and smeared it on the paper. The deacon who was supposed to be assisting the archbishop ran to find the cathedral rector, who promptly banished the spirit from the church, while the deacon and altar boys quietly dragged the archbishop's body out of it. The priest practiced immense restraint and set the record for shortest homily ever, less than an hour long, and then very quickly made arrangements for the archbishop's funeral. The choirmaster started looking for a Dorian requiem while laughing like a villain in a play. The Bishop of Séravine was an old man and would have retired soon. He faced his death with stone-faced dignity and calm. He tried to dissuade the killers from their mission, and for the sake of their souls, and with his last breaths, prayed for their redemption. Bishop Brass and the Bishop of Miravine died loudly singing the Trinitarian heresy song and the Osinan song about heresies in general, specifically the verses about modalism. Bishop Miradelo, the Bishop of Vecsevine, went into hiding and started sending out rebellious notes. Bishop Pérotin, the Bishop of Genovine, was in Jarissa, though an attempt was made to assassinate him. He, in true Jarissa fashion, literally kicked them out of the rectory. The same happened to the Bishop of Elenia, but not literally. Lanczú was searched, but he managed to hide his hairpins and his craniatis in Zefta. His days as a prisoner taught him why people feared speaking the name of Garendo. He was tempted to add Ethisica and Pérotin the mage to the list, and Miradelo for that matter. At night, Garendo and the mages kept him in some state between sleep and wakefulness, not able to dream but not able to escape while everyone else slept. It felt a little like being sick with a severe fever. Being only half asleep, he only got half a night's rest. He tried to nap to compensate, but whenever he noticed it, Garendo shocked him awake, though besides that, the Jarissa never laid a hand on him. This was the power of the Achalaro Rojo, electric hands. Now it was very difficult to get electricity to actually travel through the air and to work up enough current to do serious harm, so he could only shock someone by touching him, or touching something like metal that was touching him. And it was usually no worse than touching a doorknob after rubbing one's stockinged feet on a carpet. He could also make little sparks come from his fingertips, which looked intimidating. Potentially, he could channel it through his sword, but that seemed unfair, so he never did. The days were worse for Lanczú. Ethisica and Pérotin the mage found a number of ways to torment him. Pérotin could freeze his blood, puppet him, steal the air from his lungs, or try to twist his words into a blood magic promise. Ethisica had an extensive knowledge of knots, great skill with a knife, an endless web of insults, and an ability to weave very detailed descriptions of what she could do to his mother. That last one had managed to make him cry, which had, of course, only added to her library of insults. Unfortunately for him, most of the things they wanted to know were things he did not know, namely the locations of Via Silenda, Viodirmos, and Iulzisnia, Queen Silenda and her family, and Luzmo, Vila, and Viasinia. Garendo tried to tell them to stop torturing the boy, but they did not listen, and he did not want to risk losing the support of people who supported him because they wanted to, rather than because they were scared of him. His preferred method of trying to get the information they wanted was to eat dinner with him, but Lanczú always refused to eat. The food was very good, probably better than anything he had ever eaten, but he did not want to accept anything so nice from someone like Garendo. Or, really, anything at all. Escaping with hairpins turned out to be harder than he thought it would be. While Ethisica had taught him how to pick locks with just pins, he had not done nearly as much lock-picking, even with proper lock-picks, as she had. In addition, he could not do anything at night, and there were too many people around during the day. He did manage to find a chance to try, though. It did not go well for him. With his feet cut, every step hurt, but he had been through things like that before. The problem was trying to leave one of the most used rooms in the castle before anyone realized he was gone. One of Ethisica's Soledo caught him and dragged him to Ethisica and the mages. Ethisica just laughed. "So you tried it." Miradelo was humming a folk song and absently twisting his braid around one finger. Lanczú was not even sure the mage was looking at him. Miradelo really did not want to do this, both because he did not want to hurt the boy, and because he did not want to clean up a mess. But he knew Ethisica would not let him get away with this unpunished. He was mostly only participating to make sure they did not make too much of a mess. Lanczú glared at him. "Well, I weren't going to do nothing." The Soledo holding him tightened her grip. His accent was strong, not just because of his anger, but also because he had not made any attempt to hide it since being captured. Ethisica laughed again. "My, you are turning out to be a fun one. Now what to do with you?" Miradelo glanced over at his apprentice, and a birdcage hung from the ceiling. Elinsco straightened. "Do not think I will give you any advice."
"Who said I was going to ask?"
Miradelo asked, his tone matter-of-fact. He had a Jarissan accent. He was not going to ask. He had been considering his apprentice's weak stomach and how to keep from upsetting it. Elinsco huffed and crossed his arms. He had never liked Lanczú much, him being berated and all, but he did not want anything too bad to happen to him. Elinsco had been lucky that Miradelo had kept Evadelha from doing anything to him, but he had heard stories and had a notoriously weak stomach, especially for a Lessian. It had been the source of many arguments between him and his brother, also his brother and parents, since the former disagreed with his father's choice of a second wife. Brialenio and Duchess Varilina's mother had died soon after the former was born. "I say we punish him like the Soledo," said Pérotin the mage. Lanczú stiffened. Any comparison to the Soledo in this context was undesirable. Miradelo frowned.
"You mean cutting off his foot? You'll have to carry him everywhere."
He also really did not want them cutting off someone's foot in his rooms. Frankly, he was quite annoyed that they kept using his rooms for this. He always had to clean up their messes and the messes they caused with Elinsco. He never let anyone else clean his room, except, on occasion, his wife, because they never did it right. He had switched from fiddling with his hair to chewing on a necklace his wife had made him specifically for that purpose. "Is that?" Evadelha paused. "No, he's a boy. I ain't the same for him." "And it's gonna make people angry," Pérotin the mage pointed out. Evadelha looked over at Miradelo. "Can you stop doing that?" Miradelo blinked and looked up.
"Doing what?"
"Moving like that," she said. "At least not in front of the prisoner. We're trying to look threatening. It don't work if you're fidgeting like that." He reminded her of Luzmo in all the wrong ways. Miradelo sighed and stood rigid, his arms straight by his sides.
"Would you rather I stood like this?"
"Yes!"
"Well, don't bother getting used to it."
Miradelo thought for a moment.
"How about we burn him?"
He did not love the idea of them doing that, but it seemed like the cleanest thing Evadelha would accept. Least bloody, but probably the most likely to make Elinsco sick. Miradelo had also started tapping the floor with his foot. Lanczú stiffened. Elinsco the mage's apprentice paled. Miradelo almost winced. Pérotin the mage looked up. "Burn him? Where?" Evadelha studied the boy. "He's got a pretty face. Be a shame if something happened to it." Lanczú glared at her, straining against the Soledo holding him. He broke her grip and kicked her, then ran. Both mages and the Soledo ran after him. The mage's apprentice prayed for his escape. No one, not even a berated peasant, deserved to be at the mercy of Evadelha, and he knew the boy was strong. Brialenio claimed to have never been beaten, least of all by a berated peasant, but Elinsco was pretty sure he was lying. The four of them dragged Lanczú back in, kicking and shouting some very creative phrases. Elinsco grimaced and started praying for the doctor. The Soledo and Miradelo held him down, while Pérotin stood. Evadelha grunted. "Can't one of you freeze him?" Lanczú fought harder. Miradelo frowned.
"Not like this. I don't think I'll be able to keep hold of him."
Evadelha sighed.
"Ain't you supposed to be a good mage?"
"People," Miradelo said through a grimace, "are complicated things. It takes a lot."
"Forget I asked."
She looked up at Pérotin.
"What about you? What's your excuse for not getting on with this?"
"There a fire round here?" Pérotin asked.
"Or something odd?"
She groaned. Miradelo nodded.
"Fireplaces by the lad's cage."
Pérotin found it and used it to get a flame above his hand. He stood over Lanczú, the firelight casting his smile in an eerie glow, then crouched and burned the boy's face, over his left eye. Lanczú squeezed his eyes shut and screamed, though he tried to bite it back. That had been something he had been trying not to do. He had been trying to meet his torment impassively, with nothing more than a grunt or a grimace to show he was suffering. The only emotion he allowed himself to show was anger. It had not always worked, but he tried. Now, despite his efforts, he could not control it. He screamed. He screamed until Pérotin extinguished his flame. The blood drained from Elinsco's face and his stomach turned, but he could not look away. Miradelo grimaced. The Soledo and Miradelo dragged Lanczú to his feet, and Pérotin the mage stood. The skin around his eye was red and blistered, swollen and glistening. Lanczú fought for his composure, fuming, though shaken, and unsure of who to glare at. Trying to open his left eye was painful, though he did not think the eye itself had been damaged, but he got his right eye open. Elinsco gagged at the smell that filled the air, and Miradelo sighed at the sound of him making a mess he would need to clean up later. Between that and the smell of burning skin, the room smelled terrible. Miradelo opened a window and started using magic to try to get the smell out, muttering in frustration.
How'd you do it, boy? Evadelha asked him. How'd you get out?
I ain't telling you, Lanczú said through gritted teeth.
He's got his cloak, Pérotin the mage said. Maybe you missed something in there?
I searched it, Evadelha said. He put his hands up.
I ain't saying you didn't. Maybe just search again?
Evadelha sighed and unclasped the cloak. Lanczú fought, but he could not stop her. She searched the pockets and found the hairpins. She laughed.
Hairpins? How do you think you are? My sister? Vila?
Lanczú blinked. There was only one woman he knew of who had tried to escape from prison with hairpins. Evadelha's sister was Kara? Or it could be an unrelated Soledo who had tried to escape with hairpins. This Vila had done it. He did not voice any of this and returned to his previous expression and being unsure of who to glare at.
Well, Evadelha said, I don't think you'll be getting this back. I hope you like being cold.
Lanczú's heart sank. It was Duomi. The winter solstice was approaching quickly. He would need that. Would he even be able to survive without it? Even inside it was still cold. He had to hope that Garendo would at least force them to give him a cloak. She addressed the Soledo and the mages now.
Take him to the doctor and clean him up, then put him back where he belongs.
The doctor just about fainted when she saw what had happened. She was starting to think Evadelha was doing this to torment her as much as she was doing it to torment Lanczú. Nevertheless, she did what she could. It would scar, but as long as it did not get infected, it would not kill him. Garendo was very angry that they had done this. As for taking his cloak, he said they either had to put the boy in the dungeon or give it back. Evadelha opted for the former, since it would mean that Garendo would annoy her about her treatment of the boy less. He seemed to avoid the dungeon like the plague, so she knew he would not try to check on the boy himself. As for anyone he might ask to check on him, they were all more scared of Evadelha than they were of Garendo. Lanczú found peace in prayer. His Hranya-Tisin Zefta was found by Evadelha before he was moved, and Garendo ordered it destroyed as he found the object offensive. An opinion Lanczú thought showed almost a comical lack of self-awareness. The loss was upsetting, but it did not stop him because he had 10 fingers, and, though Zabokron would say otherwise, knew how to count to 15. Saying them Yisharal and Creed had predictably good results, and earned him a few beatings and several cuts from Evadelha. He did not stop saying it. Of course, he just started saying it silently instead of out loud, except when he was alone. One day, Lanczú sighed as they dragged him in. Just stop, he said. I won't tell you nothing, he continued. Pérotin frowned, realizing something. He had made the same connection Zabokron had. Technically, I won't tell you nothing meant I will tell you something, or anything. He remembered what Miradelo and Garendo had told him about blood magic. You could not lie while making the promise, and you could not be threatened into making it, but, as Silenda had learned, an unintended second meaning, or literal interpretation of someone's words, could be enough to force them into the promise. Quickly, he drew his knife and seized Lanczú's hand, cutting into the palm. Lanczú cried out in pain. Both his palms had already been cut earlier by Evadelha. The one made by Pérotin the mage was made in the other direction, so they formed an X shape. Pérotin remembered what Miradelo and Garendo had said. A good way to make the promise more powerful was to invoke the person's full name.
Elinsco of Bombir, son of Jarissa, daughter of Menzistiones Lincier, good son of Vielo, brother of Magria Luchonsa. You said that you'll not tell us nothing, or, in other words, that you will tell us something, didn't you?
Lanczú stiffened at the sound of his full name, feeling sick. What are you?
Answer the question, Elinsco of Bombir,
Pérotin insisted. I did, but Pérotin smiled.
So you'll tell us something. Like, say, everything you know about where Ilzisnia Dekra, his son Dirmisho, via Silenda, the retired false queen, Bella Silenda, whose throne has been rightfully retaken by the true king, Garendo, her husband Miradelo, and their children Bevela Silenda and Bevelo Gero, Villadelia, traitor to He frowned and looked at Ethisica. What do you call yourselves? Lanczú flinched at the sound of Garento's full name. Bevelo was the masculine equivalent of Bevela. Ethisica thought for a second. Nothing, really. I've been thinking of calling us the Pear Clan, though. Pérotin shrugged. Traitor to the Pear Clan, and, companions. Luz Michel, who was raised by Dale and the runaway Soledo Viasha of Kirovino, Lanczú nodded, breathing heavily and struggling to stay calm. Yes, but... And you're a good, honourable boy, right? So you'll not do nothing dishonourable like lying to us? Pérotin continued. He nodded. I don't like lying. Then I bond you to this promise, Elinsco resolution of Bombir, that you will tell us everything you know about where the people I've mentioned are, and tell us the truth.
Lanczú nodded. I will. He had no other choice. He had technically said he would, and moral consistency would order honesty. Luckily, he was not a Baladin, because if he were, they would have had to spend the next hour listening to how lying could be the less immoral option in this case, as Ethisica and Pérotin the mage did not have the right to know the information they wanted to know, and Lanczú knew that they would not do anything good with it. So while the evil object of lying could not be made good, it was better than the alternative. The most moral option in this circumstance would really be to say nothing, but the blood magic promise would not allow for that. Pérotin let go of him, smiling. Good. I'm glad we can come to an agreement. But, Lanczú said, I didn't mean that. Ethisica laughed. Oh, that don't matter. What matters is that you said it. I don't think old Silenda meant what she said neither. Lanczú blinked. What? Oh, I guess she never told you then? What the true king did to her? Ethisica leaned in. Ever wonder why she always wears gloves? Lanczú frowned. He had noticed Silenda's habit, but he just thought that it was some remnant of her noble upbringing. Many of the noble women he knew, who were not soldiers, often wore gloves. Had he used blood magic on her? What had he done to her? What had he bound her to? Ethisica chuckled. Anyway, I think it's about time you talked. Tell us everything you know. Lanczú sighed, feeling the truth rise to the surface. He could not fight it. It would come out no matter what he tried. He would be forced to tell them, even if it killed him. I think Vila gave us some clothes once, and someone mistook their Zija for her, but I don't know nothing else about her. Some friars I talked to once mentioned a boy named Luzmo, but I don't know who Viasinya is. Ethisica sighed. Well, at least what she knows ain't dangerous no more. Oh, that was her, Pérotin the mage thought. Right. Last I heard, two of Vildermos's children are in Bezvino. They might have gone there. Lanczú let out a long breath, wishing he did not have to say this last thing. When Efonsija and I left the princess and her family, we were going south. Ethisica paused. Lanczú thought she might be frowning. Well, it ain't nothing. She chuckled. I actually mean that. It's something. I wish it were more, but it's better than what we had before. She looked at Lanczú. Thank you, boy. You've been a great help to us. Lanczú looked down, guilt eating at him. These were the last people he wanted to help. Now, telling them what they wanted to know might have seemed like it would make things better. It did not. Rather, he was thrown in the dungeon and ignored until Ethisica had some time on her hands, or needed to do something annoying, like making sure he did not die or escape. Elinsco the mage's apprentice was held in his mentor's chambers. His blue robe, because it was some inviolable law of the universe that mages had to wear robes, had been taken from him, and he was dressed in silver and dark blue-green, the colors of his house. Since he had confronted his mentor just after he got back from Nakarye, his clothes were even more fine than usual, though dirty from his days in captivity, something he was very annoyed about. His right hand had been replaced by a hook, which Miradelo had taken. He had cut it off after an incident following an argument with his brother, where, in his anger, he had ripped Brialenio's soul from his body and put it in a suit of armor. Realizing how angry his parents were going to be, he had cut off his own hand to free him, and had still gotten in trouble. They had found Elinsco lying unconscious in a pool of his own blood, with a very panicked Brialenio sitting over him. Their first instinct was to blame Brialenio. Once they figured out it was not his fault, they got angry at Elinsco and sent him to Miradelo. The fact he was small enough to be kept in a birdcage had been an annoying revelation. It was uncomfortable, but for once his small size had worked in his favor, and he was able to stand up to his full shortness, though it caused the cage to rock and made him feel sick. When he had tried standing up, he had started to comment that maybe there were advantages to being small, but stopped and shouted at himself for saying he was small. Miradelo had thought that was hilarious. Elinsco's left hand was chained to one of the bars, and, of course, the chain was made of iron to stop him from using magic to escape. His right arm was free, but there was not much he could do without a hand. Elinsco heard footsteps and straightened, trying to look as dignified as he could. An older boy came in. He was over half a foot taller than Elinsco, and had thick, glossy black hair, and eyes that were so dark they looked almost to be the same color. All three Leshia children had inherited their father's black hair, but the older two had his first wife's dark eyes, while Elinsco's matched his own mother's. Mad Duke Riano's second wife always thought he loved his first, who had died soon after Brialenio was born, more than he loved her. This bitterness and jealousy, along with a little bit of encouragement from one of Ethicica's Soledi, had eventually driven her to try to kill her stepchildren. His wife's attempted murder, along with Ethicica's Soledi's meddling with Lady Quinia's mission, had driven her husband mad. Elinsco sighed when he realized who it was, leaning back against the bars of his cage. Briaquiso. Good. He glanced out the window, which for once was at eye level with him. Morning, he said. Brialenio frowned. Good morning, Elinsco Quiso. How strange it is to be the one looking up. Elinsco rolled his eyes. Oh, be quiet. A bit ironic, though, Brialenio said. If I recall correctly, it was not that long ago you were the one advocating for the release of that Jateta. Elinsco nodded. The Soledo. Yes, well, you wanted her dead, so naturally I had to make sure that did not happen. Really, the irony is with you, he continued. You were the one calling her a traitor and a rat, yet the moment things started looking bad, you stabbed all of us with a shred of loyalty in the back and decided to work with that despicable modalist heretic. He looked at where his right hand had once been. Even after 2 years, he was still not completely used to the sight of it. You know, sometimes I wonder whether I made the right choice back then. Brialenio shrugged. I would have been freed either way. Though, of course, harm to my brother is always welcome, as long as it does not come from outside our family. Elinsco laughed, gesturing around him. And I suppose that this humiliation does not count as harm, nor all my dear, trustworthy mentor did to me during our duel. Brialenio stiffened slightly, seemingly trying to glance at the door he had come in through. He tried to smile. That is different. Elinsco grimaced, cursing himself for not realizing earlier that Miradelo would be listening. I suppose it is. And really, what made you think you could win? Brialenio said. Elinsco sighed, his cage rocking again as he slumped against it. How many times do I have to tell you? You are so small that you would make Duke Elinsco the Short look tall, Brialenio sighed. Elinsco glared at him. Brialenio! Brialenio only smiled. Even against someone like Miradelo, you are just an arrogant little boy in over his head, overestimating his fledgling abilities. Miradelo was quite a large man, far taller and larger than Elinsco. Elinsco's hand balled into a fist. I was only 14 when I tore your soul from your body, and you are one to talk about arrogance. Brialenio remained calm. And yet you were nothing against Miradelo. Elinsco sighed and sat back, then looked back at him. How is our dear sister? Brialenio shrugged. She wrote to me. She said you are a traitor and we should both denounce you. Elinsco sighed again for Miradelo's benefit. Internally, he was thinking that there was no way she would actually say that. Despite the actions of her jealous stepmother and Elinsco's arrogance, she did love her half-brother, and unlike both her brothers, she was a very sweet girl. He doubted she would ever say something so callous and actually mean it. Lying like that was a rather un-Lessian thing to do, but these were hard times. So even the sweet Vachikisa has abandoned me. She has betrayed her name. Strong. Supporting that man shows weakness. On the contrary, supporting the true king, despite what others say about him, would take great strength. Brialenio said. You are the foolish one who decided you could fight a battle even a child could see was hopeless. He smiled. Then again, you are a child and could not see it. Elinsco glared at him. I am almost 17! Closer to 16 and a half. Brialenio kept smiling. Like I said, a child. A foolish child rushing in with too much idealism and not enough planning. Foolishness which cost him his freedom. Elinsco straightened, standing up to his full shortness, though his stomach churned as his cage rocked. No preaquiso. I am the free one here. I do not dance for the usurper like a puppet on his strings. Brialenio only laughed. Keep telling yourself that, Elinsco quiso. He turned and left. Miradelo entered soon after. Miradelo was a large man, easily a foot taller than his apprentice, and with a much broader frame. That second trait was not too hard to have, though. Despite a lifetime of good food, Elinsco was almost skinny. Miradelo's hair was wild, curly, and sandy blonde, with the braid of a married man on the left side of his face, and his eyes were a similar color to his apprentice's. He was dressed in a Jarissan style that would have been fashionable about 2 centuries ago, his clothes light blue and white, as were the colors of his house. Over them, following the inviolable law of mages, he wore the silver robe of the court mage. He was, as usual for him, loudly talking to himself about something that likely made sense in context, but without it made it sound like he was worse than Garendo. Elinsco was trying and failing to lie down and look like he did not care while reciting the Misharolan Creed. It took Miradelo a second to realize that his apprentice was talking and what he was saying. In response, he grabbed the thick rope under Elinsco's cage and shook it, causing it to swing wildly. Elinsco yelped and scrambled upright. He hated being suspended above the ground for several reasons, but the biggest was how easy it was to make his cage rock. This wild swinging was something he despised. When it finally mostly stopped, he clutched his stomach, feeling sick. Miradelo smiled. I thought Lessines had stronger stomachs than that. How does a rockin' bird cage make you sick? Despite his nausea, Elinsco managed to smile. I suppose that is why I was sent over here. My mother was an Arjavan. Her blood must have corrupted me. His weak stomach had actually been what started the argument that led to Brialenio's soul being put in a suit of armor. He sat back, closing his eyes. Miradelo started humming. Once Elinsco's nausea had subsided, he sat up and looked at his mentor. Why do you support him? He nearly wiped out your people, Elinsco asked. Miradelo stopped abruptly, straightening and turning to look at him. Stop your traitorous words, lad. If I didn't have to nullify your magic, I would take the air from your lungs, he said. And what do you know? Lessia wasn't part of the country at the time. Elinsco sighed, annoyed. I was not talking about Lessia. I was talking about the Jarisse, and it is not them either. We thought the Soledo and Soledo were... His argument ended in a yelp as Miradelo swung the cage again. Elinsco gripped the bars with his good hand, wishing he still had a right hand to hold on with as well. Once it had calmed to gentle rocking rather than swinging, Elinsco leaned back, awkwardly trying to get one of the ginger candies he always carried around from inside his pocket. He was trying to conserve them, as now he had a limited supply, but was not having much luck doing so. He ate it slowly, closing his eyes. When he finished, he sighed and looked at his mentor. I wanted to trust you, you know, he said. Miradelo looked up. What? No one believes the Kochi are trustworthy, Elinsco said. I did not want to believe them. I wanted to give you a chance. They have changed, I told myself. That was 50 years ago. I am sure they are not like that any more. He sighed. How wrong I was. They were all right. A more fitting name for you would be Miradelo y Kochi. Again, his words ended in a yelp as Miradelo rocked his cage, more violently this time. Miradelo watched his apprentice empty the now meager contents of his stomach, trying to do it so it landed on the floor of the room, not his cage, his eyes burning with rage. Once Elinsco had finished, he sat back, still looking a little green and trying harder than usual to not rock his still swaying cage. Hey, Miradelo, Corion, Miradelo growled. Do you understand that, Elinsco? Elinsco nodded, grimacing. I understand. Good. Do not make that mistake again. Miradelo turned back to his work, the room soon filling with his humming. Meanwhile, Elinsco's mind raced for a way out.